intro video. Okay, we're live.
Oh, yay.
Welcome to the Metamorphosis Project podcast. I'm Tina Eichenberg, one of your hostesses, and we have Eva from
Hi.
Eva Z Wellness. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Eva Zobian Wolf of Eva Z Wellness. Excited to be here and be part of this magic that we create every other week.
Yes, and I was just checking to see if we were live on YouTube, and it does appear that we are. Yeah.
Yay.
So, so the StreamYard is working, so I can turn that off, turn my phone off, because we are learning all the things as we are just doing it, because frankly, for me, that's the easiest way to learn how to do something is to just jump right in and do it.
Absolutely.
Right. So this week, how was your week? It's been 2 weeks. How was your last 2 weeks?
It's been a lot.
Yeah.
It's been a lot. Some really good stuff, some not bad stuff, but just
challenging.
You know, where you find yourself just cranky and angry at everything.
Yeah. I think there's something in the universe, something in the stars, that because there have been a lot of people who have said that they have been either more fatigued or they were more touchy, like short fuses.
So part of my yoga therapy was learning Vedic astrology counseling. And if you look at the arrangement of the planets currently, the last time that the arrangement of the planets happened in that particular order was a very chaotic point in history for the whole world.
Yeah. People sometimes don't really understand that astrology or the stars, where the planets lie, have an impact on how we feel, what our energy is doing. But it really does. There's the Schumann resonance. I don't know if you've heard of that. The Schumann resonance. There's no D in it.
That's that northern accent or lack of accent.
Yeah. The what they call the Earth's heartbeat. Yes. And when that jumps and spikes and how people feel when that energy increases, there's a lot to be said about that. Whether you believe in it or not, we're impacted by everything. And I mean everything around us.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, we are a collection of atoms and molecules moving around constantly. We have this electromagnetic resonance within us.
Right.
And it's the reason why when you go out into a park, or you go into the mountains, or you go sit by the ocean, the magnetic electrical resonance in that particular area is just so soothing and relaxing. But then you walk down the middle of a busy downtown street with all the concrete and with all the noise. And it's not to say that that's a bad place. It's just a very energetically different space.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of different spaces, our main topic, going into that empty nest stage. You've been in it for a while.
For almost, I have to do math. I know.
Don't make me math.
I know, right? So it's we're gonna say it's 8 years, roughly about 8 years.
Okay, so quite a while. So yeah, and I'm just now getting into it, and so we can kind of look at both perspectives, like really just digging into what happens when that starts to happen. How do you handle it? And then moving forward, what do you do when it's just you and your spouse? Right.
And it can be challenging, especially, and I say this with love and compassion, if your entire identity and how you see yourself as your role in life was the majority of it was as a parent.
Right. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does make it challenging.
It does. It really it does. Now, when I shared this, I think I've shared this with you before. When I got pregnant with my oldest, who is now 28. So we're talking like 29 years, almost 29 years ago when we found out I was pregnant. Well, yeah, about 28 and a half years ago. I knew that my kids would eventually leave. And so I set my heart up for that. And I think part of that comes from the fact that my older siblings both left the home before they turned 18. And it was quite the events surrounding those moments were traumatic. They were not pleasant memories when, I mean, for a teenager to leave the home, there has to be a lot of things going on, whether it's from one side or the other. I'm not blaming one side or the other, but there was stuff going on that both, my older siblings left before they turned 18. And so I always had it in my heart that my kids were going to leave one day. And I was scared to death that they were going to leave before they turned 18. And some people might think that, oh, well, that would make you hang on to your kids more, right? Hang on to them stronger, but it didn't. It caused me to, I think, almost disconnect a little bit from falling deeply in love with them on a different level, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And my oldest learned to unfortunately learn to understand that when she was a teenager. She learned to understand why I felt the way I felt, because she started to see how my relationships with my siblings were. And so as my kids grew older, there were often times that I didn't say no as much as or as hard as I probably should have. There was a lot of negotiating going on with my kids. But on the flip side, it gave us a more open door for negotiations, for conversations, not negotiations, but for conversations. So now we're at the end of my kids growing up. They're all adults. The girls, Kayla left when she was 18 for college, and really she never came back. So she's been gone 10 years now. Paige, who is due with a baby next week. Yay. She left 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago.
So can I pause for a second?
Yeah.
Can we find a different way to language that? Instead of
left?
Instead of left the house,
Mm-hmm.
what's another way of saying that
They went to live their lives.
yes.
They went to live their lives. Absolutely.
Yes, because the thing is that they're still your children. They still
Yes.
love you. You're still their mom. They
Yes.
just don't live in your house and rely on you for their adult decision-making process.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, I had a yoga it for a second.
but that's great, because some people will say that they left and really feel like they left.
Yes.
Like they left their lives. And our kids, when they move out, they don't necessarily leave our lives. They may take breaks.
Mm-hmm.
our communication may lengthen, like the time in between communicating will lengthen. It absolutely will lengthen.
Mm-hmm.
And, but yeah, it just habit.
Well, and the thing is that our role in their life changes. It
Right.
evolves.
Right.
The way that we have, you have 3 kids and I have 3 kids.
Okay.
Our kids left. Okay, I'm doing it for myself as well too. All of our kids flew. That's what we would always
Flew
say.
the nest. Yep.
Yeah, we told our kids, we expect you to fly. We
Yeah.
expect you, our job is, and my husband is just an absolute goofball about this. He's like, my job is to make sure that you are a productive member of society, that you are not mooching off of me or end up in prison.
Right.
And so he would always say, your job is to go out and be a productive member of society that is self-sufficient and able to be on your own and make your own decisions. And that
Yeah.
doesn't start the day you turn 18. That starts from the moment that we became your parents.
Yeah.
And for me, I was not raised in a house where that was the idea. It was a very, you're going to do exactly what we say, how we say it, and when we say it.
Yeah.
House.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was a struggle as a parent to find that happy balance. And I think that's why my husband came into my life, is so that he could bring that balance. He could provide that example of that balance for me so that I could learn to be a better parent. And each of our kids, they were about 4 years apart, went on into their own aspect of their lives at different stages. So the oldest lived with us for a while he was going to college, and then eventually moved into his own place and then joined the military. Our daughter, as soon as she graduated, she picked a school. We're in Texas. She picked a school in Michigan because that was her dream. She always wanted to go to Michigan State.
Yeah.
And so she put applications into a bunch of schools, and she got into some really good schools. But when the application for Michigan State, or the acceptance letter for Michigan State, came, she jumped for joy. And so
I can feel that because little unknown fact, when I was in high school, my parents are from Michigan. And it's so funny because your husband is friends with a friend of my uncle's, which is funny. But I always wanted to go to Michigan State as well. And I was going to go and live with my grandmother for 6 months so that I could be a resident, so that I could pay in-state tuition. It never panned out, but that's so funny that similarity.
yes,
I'm so glad that she got into her her heart school.
she did, and she was so super excited about that. And we were very, that was a big challenge for us for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
And that was exactly what she needed. It was exactly what she needed.
Yeah.
And then the youngest, he wanted to live life. He wanted to live life on his own terms, and figure it out how he figured it out. And so one of the challenges for me, and I read a book. I think our daughter was already in college when I read the book. Because I remember calling her and saying, having a conversation with her about it. And I'm very honest with the kids. I say, I apologize to them frequently when I recognize that I was not my best self, because the older two had the burnt out ICU nurse for a mom, and the younger one in the last few years didn't. And he recognized it. And actually, it was some of the conversations I had with him that led me to step away from the bedside and pursue yoga therapy. And one of the book that I read, the author talked about how her mother had this saying, whatever decision you make is the right one for you.
Mm-hmm.
And her mom used that saying over and over from the time they were 9 or 10 years old, where they'd ask a question and
Yeah.
mom would say, whatever decision you make is the right one for you.
Yep.
Because the thing is it's either going to provide you with something that propels you, or it's going to provide you with the opportunity for a lesson.
Yeah. And I think it's great when parents do start letting their kids at 9, 10 years old to start making some decisions, because then it teaches them how to make a decision.
And what
It
it feels
opens up.
like to fail
Right. Right.
with that, with when, or let me rephrase that. What it feels like to have the decision either stop you or push you back a couple steps or push you forward.
Right. And I think it's a great lesson for parents as well to step back and go, well, maybe my kid does know what's best for them.
There's
You
a
know,
radical concept right there.
because
Really.
even when a 3-year-old doesn't want to eat peas, because maybe the peas give them an upset stomach, but they can't really articulate that the peas are giving them an upset stomach. If they don't want to eat the peas, don't make them eat the peas.
Right. That's where eating disorders start from.
Right. Right. Yes, kids go through orange stages where they eat nothing but chicken nuggets, macaroni and cheese, and corn. But
White stage.
but eventually, if you offer, right, you offer something new, they may try it and then they may not like it, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But yeah, you have to give them that room to make those decisions. And then that's one of the things that I always loved, that my in-laws would do with us when it came to us parenting our kids, is they never came to us and said, hey, I saw Kayla doing this, it concerned me, and I think you should go and have her looked at or have her checked out or whatever. They weren't parenting over us.
And that's a big distinction. Brene Brown talks about that a lot with power over and power with.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
parenting, grandparents can be incredibly challenging.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I'm really hoping that I learn quickly not to be a challenging yaya.
I forgot.
You
That's
know?
right. You're the yaya. I'm the gamma.
Yeah. So, but my daughter lives, 2.5 hours away from us. So I don't think that's going to be, it's definitely different when they're living in your home.
And when they're a few blocks away.
Yeah. 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 When
That can
they're
be
when
different.
always, it's like that out of sight, out of mind type of mentality, that you can disconnect from the everyday things that are going on and let them live their lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, because what is it? One of my best friends, I was upset with some decisions that one of the kids was making, and she completely called me out on it and said, "So you're upset because with your experience and your knowledge that you have from the many years that you've been on this planet, you're upset because they're making decisions, but they're making decisions without that same level of knowledge and experience. And by telling them what they should be doing, you're actually preventing them from having the ability to learn those lessons and develop that experience that provides that knowledge."
Right.
And I thought, ugh, like,
Okay, fine.
well, when you say it like that,
Right.
I don't come off that good. Fine, we'll do it
Yeah.
your way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things that I've learned with, especially with my girls, it's, are you okay? Do you need help? Okay, no. All right. I'm here for you if you do. And they don't have a problem with coming to us if they do need help. And my son will be the same way. And I know that because, and we've learned, especially with him being home during, from like 19 to 25, we've learned to step back when he may be making a decision that we don't agree with and go, okay, you've got this.
And that is, I honestly believe parenting adult children can be one of the most challenging aspects of being a parent, not because of what the kids are doing, but because we as the parent have to kind of take that step back and remind ourselves that our current role is very different than the role that we had a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And having to step back and my problem is usually my face. And so, I'll use that mantra, that statement with the kids and say, whatever decision you make is the right one for you. And they'll look at me and go, yeah, but your face says something different. And I'm like,
Yeah.
can we just not pay attention to my face and
Right.
pay attention to what's coming from my heart and what's coming out of my mouth?
Yeah.
And I'll
Yeah.
working on fixing the face, but that
Yeah.
has never been that is never
Yeah.
I am not a poker player.
Yeah. I tell my kids all the time, before I say something, I'll say, look, I don't want, I don't want to pull the mom card, but blah, 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 blah. If you don't want the advice, I'm okay with that. Like if you want to go a different direction, I'm okay with that. But I'm gonna pull the mom card for a minute, and I'm gonna give you some advice. And sometimes they take it, and sometimes they don't. Um, and sometimes when they don't take it, it works out. It works out really well, and it's like it's a learning process,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because we didn't have that knowledge of letting them make some important decisions early on in their lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's very challenging and also incredibly rewarding. I love having adult children.
I do
It's a
too.
it's a whole different level of the relationship. And I think one of the things that we've really enjoyed is that when the kids call us and they say, "Hey, these are the things that are happening," and we say, "Fantastic,"
Hmm.
and support them in the decision, all of a sudden you see this
Yeah, yeah. And,
and
and and they call more often. They bring you into their lives more. I interviewed. Have you heard of the author Tina Gilbertson?
no.
She has two great books out, and I interviewed her this morning. So I'll show these books real quick. The first one is Constructive Wallowing.
Ooh.
Is feeling bad. Feeling bad can lead you to feeling better faster. How to beat your bad feelings by letting yourself have them. It's a great,
Mm.
like, relearning how to have your feelings and understand the feelings that you're having. The other one is reconnecting. It's all backwards. Reconnecting with your estranged adult child. And this is what she does more in her practice. And
Mm.
I started reading the book because I read the first one, but I started reading it in an effort to kind of understand where my parents and my older siblings were coming from.
That's a great point.
And what I didn't realize is that even though my younger brother and I do have some kind of relationship with our parents, it's still estranged because there's not really an emotional connection there anymore. It's very obligatory. You know, we have to call because they're our parents.
Well,
I don't want that to be my kids.
The thing that is challenging with that, because my sister has what I believe to be a close relationship with my mother, whereas I do not. And for my own mental health, the phone calls are usually years apart. And so one thing that I think is really important, it's probably included in this book, is that each child has a different set of parents.
Absolutely.
Parents parent
Absolutely.
differently with each child.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. My older siblings are my half siblings. We have the same dad, different moms. And my sister has said that me and my younger brother were definitely raised differently than her and my older brother. My mom's been their mom since they were 4 and 5 years old. So they were quite young when she adopted them. But completely different rules and behaviors. And so I can absolutely understand that. Even my brother and I being 21 months apart, I had different parents than he did.
Absolutely, because it all comes back down to you are a different version of yourself,
right,
from every minute to every day to every week. And so with you being the older sibling, you got the older version of the parents, and your brother got the more evolved version, the more, just a slightly more spacious version of your parents.
Yeah. And well, I'll tell you this, even my twins, I think, got different parenting because of their characteristics.
Absolutely.
So yeah. But one of the things that this book helped me to understand was the pushing that some parents do to be in their children's lives when the children aren't doing anything to push them away. So they're just living their lives. If they're in college, they've got college classes, they might have a job, life gets busy. And these parents that push and push and push and are like, why aren't you calling me? Why don't you come home to visit? And it's not that the kids are pushing their parents away. It's just that life gets busy.
Well, and hey, guess what? Here's a radical freaking concept. The phone works both ways.
It does. It does.
And you can text your kid and said, hey, I'm thinking about you, love you. Let me know
when you have a chance.
Yeah, call me when you have a chance. And
or text back. Right.
One of the things that we implemented with our daughter, because when she entered into the current school that she's in, we knew life was going to be hectic and crazy and full of unknowns. And so somebody made the suggestion to us and said, why don't you set up a weekly phone call with her so that she knows exactly when it's going to be? She has it in her calendar. And if she has other obligations at that time, she just texts and says, hey, can't do it today. Talk to you Sunday, or talk to you next week.
Right. Yeah.
And so for 3 years, we've talked to her every single time. And sometimes the phone conversations are short, and sometimes they're hours long.
Yeah.
And we get to stay updated with what's going on with her. But she also has that, I know when we're talking.
Right. Yeah. And for me, I think and this may be coming just from my own experience with my parents, but I think it is the parents. The parent is always the parent. The parent is always teaching the child, regardless of how old the child is. And I think it's the parent's job to foster that relationship with the child, regardless of how old they are, with the hopes and understanding that, your kid is going to reciprocate, right? They're going to reach back out. They're going to let you know that they're okay, but they're under no obligation to let us know how their lives are going. They're really not. They don't sign a contract with us when we have them.
And
But we sign a contract when we have our kids, because we're choosing, for the most part, we're choosing to have those children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is that we're modeling a behavior. We have been adults way longer than they have, right?
Right.
We have been on this earth for at least a decade and a half, if not longer, than our
Yeah.
kids.
Yep.
And with that should come a certain level of accountability and responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
We are here to grow and evolve as our own human self, to be a better version of ourselves. Now, with that being said, not everybody chooses to evolve.
No, they don't.
And
And they may not know how to.
And that's just it, is
Right.
There are, you and I were both raised in the feral age of children.
Mm-hmm.
And there weren't the resources available then. If you wanted to know how to be a better parent, you really had to go look for stuff. You had to go
Yeah.
to the bookstore. You had to go to the library. You had to seek out information.
Yeah.
That is not the case anymore. There is literally something that is with you every single day that you can just Google how to be a better parent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it comes down to,
our parents did not have that opportunity to do that.
No.
They didn't have all the knowledge, and even some of the knowledge that they did have access to was like, wow.
Dr. Spock.
Yeah.
There was a lot of out there theories at that time. And the thing is that the hope is our kids are going to parent their children much better than we parented our children.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we hopefully parented our kids better than our parents parented us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then this is one of those things that once you reach a certain age in life, we do all have the choice to stay exactly who we are or to become a better version of ourselves.
Yeah.
And the relationship that we have with our kids, a lot of time, and there's no absolutes, right? There's no absolutes. Every family is different. Every relationship is different. And there has to be a flow of communication. There has to be a willingness on both sides. And so, yeah, having adult children comes with its own challenges, but it also comes with its own rewards.
Yeah. I love seeing the relationships blossom between my kids and their significant others.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
My daughter, my oldest, is the only one who moved out before getting together with somebody. Well, I guess that's not entirely true. She was with a previous boyfriend when she went to college, and he wound up going to the same college. And so they did live together in college. But none of them have been able to move out on their own because it's just not financially feasible at all anymore for anybody to live on their own. But I have thoroughly enjoyed just seeing them be adults, just adulting, good and bad.
Yep.
Sometimes I have to giggle because they're going through some of the same things that we went through. And I just have to giggle and go, gosh, as hard as you think this is, you're going to get through it. It's going to work out somehow.
Yep. Yep.
So,
And that can definitely be a challenge. So when you hit those resistant moments, when you sit there and you look at this and you think, okay, how do I be that better parent to my now adult children? What are some of the practices that you do, as well as reading books? What are some of the other practices that you do to be that model for your adult children?
mm, I think back to how my mother-in-law was with me and my husband and how she handled some of the things that would arise or some of the questions I would ask her. And she always again referred it back to, well, what do you think is best for you?
What a great response.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if they come to us and ask us for advice, whenever they need um uh compassion and love, that kind of advice, like what do I do if coworker said this at work, or a friend did this, it's usually they come to me. If it's financial questions, they go to my husband. It's can you help me with the budget? Can you help me figure out how to pay, how long it'll take to pay this off? That's his realm, which is really funny because growing up, I always said, I'll talk to them about sex. You teach them how to drive and about money.
I'm laughing because my youngest came home from school one day and there had been a lecture on sex education. And I was very open and honest with the kids about life and
Yeah,
sex and anatomy because I'm a nurse.
right,
We didn't do the whole, pee pee and hoo hoo conversation. It was, these are your body parts. This
right.
is what they're called. Um, and he came home and he said, yeah, the person teaching the class was like, I bet nobody's ever heard of some of these diseases. And he's like, I bet you're wrong. I was like, oh jeez. Okay. And he goes, I really wish that you had taught this class because, she had a really, he goes, it was very challenging. You could tell she was not comfortable talking about some of these things, and she would use euphemisms and stay instead of talking about it, medically and clinically. And he's like, it was just, ugh. And I'm like, well, what, do you have any questions about it? And he was like, no, not really. I mean,
Yeah,
she didn't tell me anything that we hadn't already talked about. And I was like, okay, fair enough, cool,
yeah, yeah. It's pretty
fantastic.
open. Yeah, it's pretty open with my kids too, as far as and sometimes it's so funny because sometimes your kids will share things with you that you're like, I didn't need to know that. It's like, I'm glad we have an open relationship, but there are some things that you shouldn't share.
So I'm giggling and I'm laughing because when the kids were really, really small, my mother-in-law decided she loved to take the kids to different plays and really bring them into different areas of culture. And she really looked for things that were um, age appropriate.
Hmm.
And she got tickets for all of us to go to this puppet show. So she thought.
Yeah.
And we're all sitting in the theater, and the theater's filled with families. Everybody else, something had happened in the advertisement for this particular event that it was not communicated well who the audience who this was aimed at. And we're sitting there, and this guy walks up to a podium and he opens up this big book and he calls it the Book of Life. And he starts talking, and he talks about this magical journey of life, and he starts talking about gametes and zygotes, and I'm sitting there going, it what? And then all of a sudden he starts talking about the vas deferens, and I hear my father-in-law, hit. And I'm going, next thing you know, there's a big Chinese white lantern, the big round paper lanterns that they
Mhm.
use in a lot of festivals. And then some gentlemen dressed all in white with white pantyhose on top of their head, and they're all trying to run and break into the lantern. At this point, I can't contain myself. I am laughing so incredibly hard. And I look over at my mother-in-law, and she's just like, when intermission came, she's not a forceful person in any way, shape, or form. When intermission came, she said, "Everybody grab your coats and we're leaving right now." And we get home, and the oldest was probably about 11 or 12 at that time, and he was just kind of like, "What just happened? Let me grab my anatomy book and show you."
Right.
And so I pulled out the anatomy book and I said, "Okay, these are the terms that you were hearing. These are the things that they were referring to." And he went, "No wonder Oma was so mad."
So um I think I can up that. Have you seen the movie The Ugly Truth with Gerard
No,
Butler and Katherine Heigl?
I don't think I have.
It's from 2009. And the trailer that I remember, now granted, I didn't realize I must not have realized that it was rated R at the time, because I took my 12-year-old daughter and two of her friends to see this movie. There is a scene in it where it's like the when Harry meets Sally scene when she has the orgasm in the diner. It's kind of like that. Yeah. Talk about, oh my God, what did I just do? I mean, at that point, I think the movie is like a 2/3 of the way over. But yeah, I had to explain to my daughter and her two friends that that this was not an appropriate movie for me to take them to, and I apologized to their moms profusely, and they laughed. They had a good laugh. Luckily, they were more like me, and they were a little more lenient. But like, it was just like we all have those moments.
And it was funny because I remember, the kids all watching Friends with us.
Hmm.
And now I look back and I'm like, the episode where they got free porn, and I'm like, huh.
Yeah,
And we just didn't make a big deal out of it.
we
We were
didn't.
just like, it was just,
Yeah,
we're like, okay, you're not seeing it. They're talking about it. And you're
right.
also hearing the women and how they talk about it.
Yeah,
So you're hearing multiple sides of it. And, make your own choices, make your own decisions in life. And so yeah, I mean, there's just certain aspects where you're like, okay, looking back, how could I have handled that a little bit differently, or would I have handled that a little bit differently?
right. Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I would have handled it any differently than I did.
Yeah,
Because again, it opened up the door for conversation about
yeah,
whatever, and it's like, now, I mean, this is how open, how comfortable my daughter is. When we went to visit her at college, I think she had to have been a sophomore or a junior. They were living off campus, And we walk in, and there is one of those suction cup dildos stuck to the fuse box. And I walked in, and I'm just like, Kayla, really? And she's like, well, we would have taken it down if it was Julia's mom. But because they all had that they were comfortable with me in that respect, that like it's, it is what it is. It's most women have one.
Yep.
Whether they want to admit it or not, it's a part, it is a part of life.
Sorry, I
but it was I never,
the microphone was with me.
oh but that was when they were 6, 7 years old, and you start getting into that stage where they're asking questions. That is not where I thought a conversation would ever go, because I never had those conversations with my mom. I was so embarrassed to have any kind of conversation about my body, sex, anything with my mom.
Absolutely.
As early as I can remember, I never was comfortable talking to her about any of that stuff. And so I think I made it a point to be more open and not put anything down about sex or our bodies, because I wanted them to be able to come to me and ask questions if they had questions.
And that's the thing, is when we have, because what's the alternative? Where do they get the
From your
information?
friends. Yeah.
I mean, and that's exactly where I got information as well too. There was, the school sex ed classes, which were
A joke.
totally ridiculous. Honestly, the big majority of where my information came from was either I went and looked for it for myself in books, but there was also a lot of really raunchy movies in our lifetime, in our teen years, where I was watching movies that nobody knew.
Yeah.
Right. I'm watching, oh gosh, when cable first came out.
Yeah. Well, do you remember that you could try to turn the channel in between two channels and you might get the dirty channel?
Well, I never got any of that. Mine was all just watching rated R movies that I wasn't supposed to be watching. And so it was, a lot of like frat party movies.
Porky's.
Yes.
Porky's. Yeah. Porky's, I think, was the first time I saw like full frontal male. I think there was because I think there was a streaking scene in that movie. It's been so long since I've seen it.
Since I've seen that movie. I don't think I've watched it as an adult. I've only watched it as a teenager. And so, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that if kids don't get that information from us,
right,
well, then kids are getting information from other places. And as a medical person, I can tell you some of the completely inaccurate information that kids had when I was a teenager, and the inaccurate information that people have had over the course of the years.
Yeah. I almost wish that there was a space where kids were comfortable enough to stand up in front of their friends, right, and say, this is what I heard is true, right? And then have it validated or fixed. Like, okay, so that's not true, but this is what's more true, right? Having that safe space with another adult. And I think that's more of what sex education should be more like, is what have you heard? What is your view of what STDs are, pregnancy, sex, rape, all of this stuff. What is your view on it? And let's break this down so that you have the right information instead of just throwing all of this information at them and expect them to determine what is true and what is not. Because just because you give them a pamphlet doesn't mean they're going to believe you, especially if their friends are going, oh, that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because we've all been there. Our friends have all said, oh, you can't get pregnant having sex standing up.
Yep. Oh my goodness.
Or
inaccurate.
Right. Or don't go to first base because you might get pregnant.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. Oh. The crazy ways that it gets talked about.
Yeah.
And then talking about the whole thing about, like that's a great opportunity for talking about consent.
Yeah.
Because consent comes in many forms.
It does. Wow, when you say we start with one subject and we go off to a totally
right? Hey, the conversations that we have are always entertaining.
Yeah.
And it's it's all relevant because
it is.
As your kids get older, what the knowledge they take out into the world is part of the knowledge not only that they got from us, but the knowledge that they got from their
Right.
friends, social media, the internet. And so how do we be that source where they are able to come back and say,
yeah,
I felt prepared. I didn't feel prepared. Why didn't you ever tell me about this?
Yeah. You always wonder, did we give them enough information? But we don't know. We really don't know what they don't know. Right. There was something that one of our kids didn't do. And we're like, that's just common sense. And I asked my husband, I'm like, did we ever talk to them about that? Like, did we ever bring it up or have a discussion about what happened? And he had to sit and think. He's like, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if we've ever talked to them about that. So if we didn't talk to them about it, how would we know that they know? We think it's common sense because we know about it.
Right.
But if we haven't taught it to them and we don't know that they don't know, they haven't learned it from anybody else, it's not common sense to them.
Yeah, exactly. And
so I hope that we're packing my son, the rest of his stuff up into a U-Haul tomorrow and helping them move into their first apartment. With their cat, their puppy, and just, we're going to be leaving there. Like I'm leaving them in kindergarten again. It's like, I've been having tears, and I told my husband I was pre-gaming. So I didn't have them. Thumbs up. So I didn't have them all at once. But I'm sure I'm going to have tears. If not in front of him, it'll be later on in the evening because, after all the hubbub, all the busyness goes away. But, it's a new chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited for what's to come for my husband and I. We've for as long as we've been married, we've had kids. So we've had weeks here and there where it's just been the two of us on vacation, but we've never had like an entire month of living together, just the two of us.
And that, I think, revisiting this topic in a month or 2 months will be a really good really be a good idea, because it does take a while as empty nesters to really feel and recognize the way that the space is different, and the way that
Mhm.
the relationship with your spouse becomes different as well.
Yeah. Yeah. He doesn't think it's going to change too much, but I think it will. I think
Mhm.
because I don't think there's going to be as much stuff to do in the background, like dishes, cleaning up, cleaning bathrooms, that kind. There's not going to switching laundry. There's not going to be as much background noise going on. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus my journaling on that over the next month or so, and that way when we come back and revisit it, then I can kind of gather my thoughts from what I have been through in the last month, and show people, like, this is kind of how empty nesting goes when your last one flies the coop.
Mhm.
Zoos.
Yeah, and I honestly, one of the biggest struggles for me was grocery shopping.
Yeah, I don't know if that will be one of my struggles, but I can definitely see how absolutely having to cut down what you're buying.
Lear Learning to cook for just 2 people
Yeah.
after cooking every I would not one of our kids was a light eater.
Mhm.
They were all athletes in some way. And so, we had a Costco membership, and Costco was how we had a separate freezer. We had
Yeah.
the extra freezer, the extra refrigerator, because we lived outside of San Antonio. And so we lived about 30 miles from the nearest Costco. And so we would stock up on things, and getting out of that mentality of having to have enough food
Yeah.
to feed at least one teenager
Mhm.
was probably one of my biggest challenges in terms of the household.
Yeah.
Um, because by the time the last one moved into their own space, they all everybody had been establishing their own identity, and establishing their own routine, and the
Mhm.
youngest was very much a social butterfly, and so he was always here, there, and everywhere.
Right.
um so the quietness in the house
Yeah,
wasn't
that's what I'm
necessarily.
not looking forward to, is, because every day when my son comes home from work, he comes in, I'm like, "Hey, Boog, how was your day?" There's not going to be that anymore. I'm going to be by myself for pretty much 12 hours Monday through Friday, 12 hours a day Monday through Friday, because I work from home. So
Mhm.
it's just going to be me and the two cats.
Well, definitely some opportunity for some self-reflection and self-care.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I
absolutely. There is definitely, yeah, my house will be spotless for sure.
or not,
Absolutely.
totally up to you. I'm a big proponent of radical self-care right now,
Yeah.
for the way that balancing your nervous system at this point in our lives requires radical self-care, way
It
more than
does.
we actually think it does.
That's what I tell my clients all the time. The ones that don't do a whole lot of self-care, I'm like, you realize you should be doing, at least in the beginning, like 2 hours a day. And they're like,
Absolutely.
"Oh," I can't do that." I'm like, "Why?" because I don't have time. I'll find you the time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One of the ways that I've been
How long
doing
are
it
you on your
lately.
phone? Yeah. Like how long are you on your phone? Because I tell you what, I know some people who sit on their phone for 4 hours after work. Instead of watching TV, they're on their phones. It's like
So
you
one thing
have,
that I went to Ulta and I found this hyaluronic acid. There's a brand that is all science-based, and the hyaluronic acid is ridiculously cheap, like less
mhm,
than $10. Um, and so I'm like, "I'm just gonna try it and see what I notice, see
right.
what I feel." Like, the very first time I put it on, I was just like, and so now it's like, okay, my self-care routine, like I am luxuriating in this particular aspect of my, it's something I do
Yeah.
every day, but
Yeah.
now it's an elevated level of self-care.
Yeah. 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 Self-care is not, I think that there are so many different types of self-care, right? There's when we start with it to use it as a healing modality, it's got to be things that foster a good mental health.
Mhm.
And part of that is doing things that you enjoy. If using whatever the stuff is that you're using on your face is luxurious to you, it makes you feel good, do it. And
Yeah.
if it's a weekly massage, do it. But you also have to do other things like going for walks, getting in some movement of some kind, getting into a meditation or mindfulness practice. When I say meditation, people automatically go, I can't do meditation. I can't sit there for an hour and do nothing. I'm like, you don't have to sit for an hour. 5
One
minutes.
1 minute,
1
1
minute.
minute, 1 minute, and
1
it
minute.
doesn't even have to be sitting in silence. You can sit and listen to music. You can sit and repeat a word. You can sit
Yeah,
and do mobility
right,
exercises
right.
in your
It's just
fingers.
put the phone down, turn off the TV, just be. Don't add sensory to it. Don't add stuff to it. Just be. Learn to just be with yourself. And that was one of the hardest things that I had to do in the beginning of my healing journey. And going forward, I'm going to have a lot of time to just be. And it's going to be a lot of fun. That's what I'm hoping. It's going to be a lot of
Yeah.
fun because I'm learning to roller skate again. I'm I'm getting back into my workouts. Um and it's not that my son was keeping me from doing those things, but I don't know. I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's just like there's a new energy in wanting to do those things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, yeah, it's not that your children are preventing you from doing these things, that your priorities and your focus was in other places.
Right. Right.
And now with that alleviation of that role and responsibility, that opens up the space and the opportunity for you to restore your relationship, to deepen your relationship with yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And my husband in the process. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And so one of the things my husband and I have started doing is taking little mini vacations, where
Mhm.
we put the RV and we go maybe 45 minutes away and we just
Yeah.
camp for the weekend. We're out in
Yeah.
nature. Because
Yep.
again, if you're doing meditation, you're doing mindfulness, sitting on a park bench and paying attention to the sounds and the sights and the smells, putting the phone down,
Mhm.
not having it, putting it on do not disturb, turning off the notifications, putting the
Yep.
phone so you can't see it or hear it, And simply being in that space, that is meditation.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not trying to do transcendental is it transcendental
Transcendental
transcendental.
meditation.
Thank you. Yeah, we're not trying to, go to another universe, another world. We're not trying to have all of these wonderful images come in. We're just trying to find some mindfulness, find some peace, and relax.
And that is such a beautiful way to calm your nervous system, calms the inflammation in your body,
Yeah.
and allows you to be so much more responsive instead of
Hmm.
reactive.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Sorry, I had to
All right.
science it up a bit.
Yeah. As we come to the end, everybody who has children is going to go through this empty nest stage, and I look forward to you guys going through it with me and getting advice from Eva, as she's already been through it. She's been through it for 8 years now, um, and I'm sure that it becomes the new normal.
It's
Yeah,
another season of life.
it is. It is, and it's an exciting one.
It's a beautiful season, and so you get to make it whatever you want,
Yeah.
and it is it can be joyful and it can be struggle. It's again, you make it what you want it to be.
Oh, I
Um,
choose it to be joyful.
yes, I love that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me again. I love our talks.
Me
Um,
too.
and I really look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
Yes. All right. Well,
All right.
have a
Thank you.
fabulous 2 weeks, and I will talk with you soon.
Yeah. And thank you for everybody who came on to watch. If you have any questions about what we talked about, go ahead and drop them down in the comments after this live is ended, and we will get back to you and answer those questions. Until then, you're worth spending your time on. Have a great week. Bye bye.
Take care.